An 18-year-old CapaBlanca shows us his endgame skills with three powerful central pass pawns in this game. So CapaBlanca is playing with the black pieces, and Albert Whiting Fox is playing with the white pieces. And after the bishop to b5, knight comes to f6, and castles on the king side Albert. So this is the Raul Lopez Berlin defense opening that is being played. So bishop to e7 by Capa, and rook comes to e1 against the king of Capablanca. So Capa just pushes his pawn to d6, activating his light square bishop, and also kind of avoiding the risk of doubling up the pawns if the bishop captures here. So after that, d4 is played, and e into d4 is played, and the knight captures the pawn, and the bishop comes to d7, unpinning this knight and also supporting this knight because it was attacked twice. And knight to c3 by Albert, and castles on the king side Capablanca as of the eighth move. Knight now retrieves to e2, trying to reorient the knight Albert, and rook comes to e8, and contesting the white's rook, and knight to g3 by Capablanca, and knight to e5 by Albert, and knight to e5 by Capablanca, and these both the knights are leaning towards the king side now. And bishop captures the bishop, and the queen captures the bishop back, and f4 is played by Albert, getting more central control, attacking the knight because all these four squares in the center on the black side is now controlled by white. So this is important because later on the game you'll see how this changes and how Kappa uses his endgame skills and tactical skills to get control of the center with his pass pawns. So knight now retreats to g6, and knight to f5 by Albert, but it was better to push the pawn to h3, preventing this from any of these pieces coming into this particular square. So bishop to f8, bishop retreats. He didn't want to this knight to get exchanged with this bishop. So the bishop goes to f8, protecting the king pawn, and the queen now comes to d3. So the rook comes to d8, creating a battery. Even though this pawn is covering that battery, later on it will be quite useful in the game. And bishop to d2 by Albert, allowing him to connect his rooks, and d5 by Capablanca, attacking the central pawn, which is actually exerting pressure on his camp. So instead of going for the exchange, e5 is played, attacking the knight. So an in between move, the bishop to c5 check, and the king moves away. And then now the knight jumps to g4, threatening to fork the king and the queen here. So the knight retrieves to d1, preventing that from happening, and the pawn push of f6 happens now, attacking this pass pawns in the center. The knight is now attacked with the h3 pawn. So earlier, if he had played that h3, the knight wouldn't have come here, creating these threats over here. So the knight now goes to f2, and with a check, and the knight have to capture back. So the knight captures back, and the bishop captures the knight back, and the rook goes to e2, attacking that particular bishop here. So instead of protecting the bishop, Kepa just uh, takes that pawn f into e5, and now the rook captures the bishop, and Capablanca plays e4. This move is a very powerful and crucial move because your queen is under attack, and this knight is also hanging because support of this queen is cut off with this pawn move, and this knight is hanging basically. So once you move the queen, this Kappa's queen can just capture the knight. Also, it creates a good pawn structure in the center, and its Kappa is also threatening to push this pawn and poking both the rook and the bishop here. And he could also push his other pawns and creating a nice little pawn structure on in the center of the board. So very crucial move. So because of that, the knight moved to h6, getting at least he got a double pawn due to that. So basically, the bishop that was captured earlier, he got back that piece, and with a good central pawn structure and a good attacking combination and pressure in the center. So the queen now comes to d4, trying to attack the king, and after that the queen comes to g7, because once this bishop comes here, it's going to create a lot of threat, because yes, because of the knight here, because with the pawn get pushed, the knight will have to move, and basically it will be checkmate or checkmate threat here on the h8 square. So the queen comes to g7, uh, attacking back the queen, and the queen takes the a7 pawn, and he gets back the b2 pawn. And after that, the rook comes to e1, countering this particular strong central pawns. And d4 is played uh, by Kappa, pushing his pawns in the center, and f5 by Albert. Basically, so it was a better move was to bring your queen to this c5 square, and but that pawn move was played, and uh, Kappa just ignores that and pushes his pawn to e3, forking both the rook and the bishop. And after that, the rook just goes to e2 here. So basically, if you capture this particular bishop here, this pawn is basically pinned. If you capture, you will lose both of these rook for one rook basically. So I'll just show you what will happen, but still Kappa's game would have been better. So yes, this rook captures the rook, so you have to capture back, and after this rook captures, you are down by a rook. But after that, once the king moves away, there is no way you can prevent this uh, pawn from queening. So the pawn queens, and it's a check. And once the king moves, you can just place this queen to b6, preventing the capture of this pawn and creating any checkmate threats. And because of the knight's present here, the queen cannot just come here and creates any checks right now. And yes, the rook could come here later on in the game. So that option was there, but Kepa didn't go for that. He kept the central pressure and his pawns intact, and instead he went for knight to f4, attacking this particular rook, which do not have any other good place to go, because all other squares are covered by its pawn pieces or with attacks on by the black pieces. So bishop now retreats to c1, attacking the queen. So now the queen now immediately goes to b6, looking for a queen exchange, and because of the powerful position he finds himself in, a queen exchange is wise for black. But Albert didn't go for that. He places his queen to a4, attacking this backward pawn, and the knight captures the rook, and in an in-between move places the queen to c4 with a check. And after the king moves away, this knight will be captured back, and after that, the queen again goes to a6, now forcing an exchange of the queens, because if you move this queen, your rook will be gone. And so basically, Albert places his queen to d3. The idea is that once you capture this queen back, the pawn will capture back, and the rook and the pawn will prevent the further pushing of these both of these powerful central pawns. So immediately c5 by Kappa, basically creating a strong center presence, and there is no obstruction for these three pawns to go forward in the game, creating pressure and to win the match. So after that, g4 by Albert, trying to create a counter pressure on the king side with his pawns, and Kepa just pushed c4. And at this position, uh, Albert basically resigns the game, because after you capture this pawn, there is no stopping of these pawns, and the rook will capture these pawns back, and the king will basically defend these three passed pawns, and this pawn will be basically countered by this backward pawn over here, and there's two rooks on the board as well. So a combination would look like this. I'll just show you a quick combination how the game will go. And after this rook goes, you cannot just go bring back your rook with this pawn move, and he will try to capture the rook, so the rook will go back protecting the pawn. The king cannot enter this area because of the presence of the rook here, and after that the rook will go here, and that pawn will get exchanged for the rook, and basically you have two rooks and on the board, and all these pawns will be dealt by the king and these pawns as well. So a strong powerful central pawn march by Capablanca, which resulted in his victory in this match quite early. So as of a little bit earlier in the game, the game ended as I just showed to you. So thanks very much for watching. We'll be back with more such videos.